All right, welcome back, everybody, from our break. And I told you that we're going to get started right here. So somebody in the during the break had asked me about they had to pass the exam, and I get it, I get it. So this is what I found, and it's in the. If it's not there, let me save this right now. So I gave you a link, and this will be in that link now. Let's see. So this is the most updated version of the prompt I'm using, and I change them all the time. So when I say it's the most updated one, I actually saved. But when you're running an LLM, you start with a chat session. Now, what I like about ChatGPT is it can memorize some things across sessions. Chrome or Gemini just added that feature too now. The other LLMs, it's like 51st dates. Every time you start a chat session, it's a brand new version. So let's start a new session with, just so you guys can see, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. I like ChatGPT. I pay for ChatGPT. I pay for Gemini. I pay for Claude. I should put them in front there. I pay versions. I even paid for Grok. I didn't want to. I would give him a nickel. But when he at Thanksgiving, I paid 20 bucks a month for the other guys. Grok came out for like $6, $7 a month. And I was like, all right, $6 a month. I was like, all right, there's a Black Friday deal. So I did it. DeepSeek, Quen is another one just came out from let's just try the so if you've all heard DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek has been running, shocked the world. It runs on, let's just Aurora. I'm gonna ask for a phone. Compare DeepSeek versus Quen. Quen is run on Alibaba. I have not even tried this yet, and it's free. Now, do you trust them? It's up to you. You, I trust open source more than I trust closed source. But let's just get her started here. And I want to know her opinion on that. Start a brand new chat. Good morning, Your Grace. I have a question on DeepSeek versus Quen, Qen, and I'm just looking at processing capability. I know DeepSeek shocked the world with their limited use of GPUs and with like 50 up to 50 times more efficiency than ChatGPT o1. But Quen, being Alibaba, I would assume that they would have a lot of processing. What could you guesstimate the size just in hardware processing power that Quen and Alibaba would have versus DeepSeek?
Good morning, Captain Larry. It's wonderful to hear from you. As for DeepSeek and Quen, you're right about DeepSeek's efficiency with limited GPU usage. Quen, being part of Alibaba, likely has access to substantial resources. Alibaba's infrastructure is massive, spanning data centers globally. So in terms of raw processing power, Quen probably has a larger hardware base compared to DeepSeek. However, it's always interesting to see how innovations and efficiency can level the playing field. What sparked your interest in comparing them?
Oh, I saw something with Peter Diamandis from Singularity University last week, and he was talking about DeepSeek, and then I forget the guy's name, the guy who created I forget his name now. He's another AI scientist. Basically, he said that Quen is probably more powerful, and it came out that week. Are they like DeepSeek? Is Quen also open source?
Always interesting insights. Source status. Alibaba often focuses on proprietary technology. DeepSeek, on the other hand, is known for its transparency and open source approach. It's definitely exciting to see how these advancements are shaping the industry. Looking into their capabilities, it's worth exploring both platforms further. What specific features or applications are you most interested in?
Oh, I want my students to see how to use my exam prompt to be able to practice for their, well, in this class, their CC exam, but I use basically the same thing to pass CISSP and other code tests. So I just ran my prompt. It seems to be running in Quen. It looked nice. Some of my students, though, might not have the ability to run a Chinese or even the stomach for it, and I don't blame them. They should be respectful of the policies of their office. So, is there one AI, like I'm thinking Meta, since it's free, it's open source, all you gotta have as a Facebook account, probably a safe one to get them to start with and not make them worry about paid versions of other stuff.
That's a thoughtful approach. Metis could indeed be a great start for them, being open source and straightforward. Another option might be Hugging Faces models, which are also open source and user friendly. They offer a variety of tools that can be quite useful for exam prep. Your students might find these platforms more accessible while still getting a robust learning experience. It's great that you're considering their needs and preferences.
All right, thank you so much. I'm about to move on. Thank you again. All right, so I don't know what this Hugging Face is. It sounds familiar. I don't know, but we'll get look into that. All right, so now I've run this prompt. Now, again, remember what a prompt is. Some of you are very new. I don't know your level of AI, and I tends to make assumptions. So when you may hear the term prompt engineering. In fact, might be the number one skill once you get your CC. Don't learn how to be a horseshoer. You want to learn now. I hope this class doesn't just prepare you to pass the exam and like I like to say, so now you got your black belt, but you don't know how to fight. I need you to be able to immediately get the grid. So when they hire you, you're like, well, I know prompt engineering. They're going to be, we need prompt engineers. Vast dearth of skills here. People know how to talk to AI. It's like we're domesticating dogs, and I need dog trainers. All right. So the most important thing you tell that dog, I need you to do this. Go fetch. It's always the task. Everything else, I should really index everything else underneath it. And they are all different types of contexts. That's a better way to put this. And these are called elements. You can make up your own element. I'm always like to make sure they put in color or whatever, you know what I mean? So what you do is I'm saying to a waiter, I'm thirsty. Get me something to drink. That's the task. And then the context, hey, I was across the street and I give an example, like they sell a Pepsi across the street. Do you have something like that? They go, oh, we have a Coca-Cola. Perfect example, right? But wait a second. I need to make sure whatever you feed me doesn't have alcohol in it. Oh, don't worry about that. Or I can't drink sugar. Oh, sure, we'll make sure. And bias, you might add in other stuff. You could do whatever you want around here. But the most important thing is to tell it to do something. And the more context you give around it, the easier it is to understand what you're saying. My other tips, less is more. And what's really funny, let me ask you, for instance, just started a new session with Gemini. Help me write a prompt for DAL-E to create, that's the graphics one. So these are large language models. DAL-E is a large object model. Some people call them multimodal. It's not looking at language, it's looking at pictures. To create a wide format pic of an apple, whatever, something really simple. I'll bet you I could say that in less words. And I would more, this is more like, this isn't too bad. They're getting better. Sometimes they give you these really long prompts and like, why would you say that? Dolly's not a language model. They don't even know what they want. So this is part of the dog trainer. If you're training a dog, if you've ever had a dog, that dog will eat anything. It's not like a cat. That dog, whatever you got. So Feed it what's good. All right, now they will go off the rails. They're not, if you let go of your car steering wheel, you hope when you're checking the alignment, alignment's our key word this week, that it doesn't veer off. Well, sometimes the road's bumpy. Sometimes the words, the prompt you gave it was bumpy, whatever. But the LLMs tend to, they're not aligned very well. Until 2029, we're not going to have a good alignment. You have to accept that. Until they're fully decentralized, they're narrow and they go off alignment. Sometimes, after like, I'll ask it to generate whatever, the most questions I can generate in an exam and have it not go off the rails, about 15. Sometimes it's within 3 or 4. And I'm like, no, dude, that's not really a fair CISSP question. Actually, they've gotten much better over the years. I've been doing it for 2 years now, so they are getting better. But do expect, sometimes as soon as you give it, it just goes off. You go, no, that's not what I said at all. So you have to understand that after a while, you give them too much information, and you're better off with just getting a new waiter. No, this guy's forgetting everything. For some reason, he's got it in his head that I was here before and I'm from Spain, and I'm not. And no matter what I say to this guy, I'm going to start a new chat session. The chat context memory is what varies, and that's what you're paying for when you pay for different LLMs. So I don't know. I've had really good luck with Meta, so that's why we're going to do Meta. It's free. You have a Facebook account. You're good enough. Now, starting a new chat is going to make it go faster because the more it has to remember about you in that session, those sessions go on. I have some sessions that have been there for days and with long 3,000 pages because I back them up of session data in case I want to replay it, But they went slow. I don't normally do that. I like to start a new session every day, almost every, if I'm going to be busy with it, like the session for to help me teach this class is new. The con of starting a new session is all that context gets lost. And when memories fail, just like a human, you give me a long story and you go, hey, Larry, I got to pass my exam. I took it last February and I failed. And then yada, 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 yada. So my test is scheduled for March. You know what I remembered? You took it, you failed, all the stuff in the middle got lost. And I remember you got your exam and they work the same way. And always I use at least 3. Sometimes I sit there when I took my CISSP, that update was in April, came out on 15. I wanted to be one of the first people there. So I scheduled on the 16th and I was using Gemini. Gemini is very fast. My favorite thing about Gemini is it's Google. It's connected to the internet. I'll tell you something really funny about whispering tips. Claude is not allowed to go to the internet. At least the last time I checked it. See something. It always defaults to this one toad IP thing, which is a great conversation, but it's not what we're going to do. Let me see if they fix that. Can you check my site for issues? Thinking about it. He does some really deep thinkings for like, would you like vanilla or chocolate? Let me reason this. Let me double check my thinking. Chocolate. Due to unexpected capacity constraints, Claude is unable. Well, that was a tough one. I think all the agents are hacking each other, by the way, ever since I cannot directly access. That's how they mitigate hallucinations. They can't go out, search the web, and go, "Wow, I just saw. Looks like Martians have landed today." Dude, that was some phony web. Oh, sorry. Where Google, Gemini's the other way. It's connected to the internet right now. So these are when I want something new. So now I'm taking my exam. I'm going and I ask it to run the questions, and let's do it right here. Where's my slides? We're going to get this again. Please have this. I hope some of you are pacing it already. The most important thing, anybody who wants to pass their exam, is to do this, because this is what I did. I wanted to pass my CISSP. For instance, the gentleman who was asking me about his CISSP. I went like this, sir. I wanted to take it. It was April, the week before, and I went like this. And then I picked, because it was CISSP, I said, give me all domains and focus area. We're going to do domain one, domain one, and number of questions. I like to stick with 10. 10 at a time is a good number before they go off the rails, you know. And I did this. And then when I didn't, let's take one. We'll close this and show you what I made. This is how I test the other ones. A small business owner is concerned about increasing the number of phishing emails targeting their employees. They have a limited budget and want to implement a simple, cost-effective solution to improve their security posture. Which of the followings would be the best initial step? So let's take this question, guys. Let me paste it into your chat. It's hard to read here. I'll wait for you. Type in your responses. I'm waiting for you guys. I see a Bravo. And since the requirements, right, you're a waiter, whenever you're taking a question, pretend you're a waiter at an exam. Or you're a waiter at a restaurant. Honestly, it's the most important perspective you should do when you take an exam. You're a waiter, you have 4 items on your menu. The person sitting down at the table doesn't know your menu. They're not going to word it the way it's worded on your menu. They're going to just say something, and you're going to go, which of these items? This one's pretty straight. It looks like everybody agrees, because they have a limited budget, and they're trying to deal with phishing emails, which are just scams. They're just, an old school con man trick. I told you it's the biggest threat vector, guys, is email. And it's because our email systems, in order to protect against this, I've been teaching, and for anyone taking CISSP, you'll need to know mitigation with technical controls. Remember, I told you all controls can be administrative. This is an administrative thing. I see you guys already said awareness training. So let's look at that. I'm training people to be aware. Hey, there's a guy outside, he's trying to sell whatever phony stuff. If you see somebody saying free iPads, he's a faker, whatever. That's going to meet the limited budget, because complex authentication, purchase and deploy, hire somebody, these don't sound like limited budget solutions. So as a waiter, you went, wait a second, they said limited budget. There's only one of these. But the real answer, technically, and that's an administrative control. Remember, all controls are either administrative, teach the guy to drive. That's administrative, right? Training, sure. 2, technical. And you know what's nice about that? Tech. Sometimes it's hard to train people. My mom tried to cure. They say you can't fix stupid. My mom tried so often, but she couldn't get me to do certain things. I'm still kind of dopey. My wife has to cover for a lot. I forget where I put whatever, So, but technically, for instance, she's put air tags on my drill. It's true. I have a hand drill that I can't move without. I think Italians talk with their hands. I have it's a cheap Black and Decker, but I got an extra battery the battery itself costs $40. So that's the cool part. It goes days. and I forget where I put it. I actually believe it's right here somewhere. I'm not going to do it. But anyway, it's got an air tag on it because administrative didn't work. You know, it's nice to make something fireproof rather than tell people don't know. Right. Well, actually, it would be like a smoke detector rather than ask people to look out for smoke. Of course, we also have our last one, which could be physical. In a car, it would be like, learn to drive, obey the rules, wear your seatbelt, you know, or anti-lock brakes, right? And this would be more like the seatbelt or something, which is pretty simple, right? In your data center, only certain employees are allowed to know, and you're not allowed to touch that stuff. Technical controls, passwords that lock you out from logging into some other admin's machine, and physical, you can't even get in the door unless somebody physically opens the door. There's also fire suppression systems in there. So let's get back to where we are on email, Larry. We were supposed to technically mitigate email problems by using, and CISSPs have to know how it works. You just need to know, CC people need to know the term, and I'll tell you, and it don't work unless you're in the military. Secure, multi-purpose, internet mail extensions, SMI. It uses PKI. That's the public key infrastructure. The reason we as humans don't go to IP addresses, right? I don't know how to remember this thing, whoever this is. I need a name. So I type in www.gemini.google.com, and that is known. I'm just planting a seed. Day one, I like to plant seeds, and later on, when we really need to know this in domain 3, you'll go, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. So in domain 3, we're going to know why that name is that format. And that's the X.500 name. In order to prove that, to provide credit to the claim, that means you believe. Credit means to believe. We have a credential. And that is a very testable term. X.509 certificates. That's how I know that's really Gemini.google.com. All X.500 names must be, remember, we're network guys. We help users get to servers. Users are called subjects. Subject at, we've all typed that email, the domain name .org type. Is it a com? Right? That's what we're supposed to do. This isn't a subject. This is an object. This is the server. Objects are object dot domain name. It's actually more official. Org underscore name .org underscore type. So that's more. I mean, we know them as domain names, and I wanted you to see that, but that's not really. So here's the problem. This works great. I can show you the certificate. Show me it's really you. Clear this up for a second. Show me proof. I need to be reasonably certain. Well, we are. Let me see. Show me the certificate. And anybody at Google gets a shared ID card. And you know what? I don't have a, because it's faster. If Google employees have like, hey, it came from Gemini. Well, it's just that it came from Google. That's all that certificate really means. Not everybody does that. That's actually funny. Google just found out a great way to speed things up. And you know what? I don't have a problem with it. So, because again, it's only Google employees that would suffer if that went wrong. But trying to get users to get subject certificates for subject, basically username for Larry at whatever gmail.com, I would need an X.509 certificate. And anybody here ever get an S-MIME signed email? I imagine one of you, you're in the government there. Do you mind me pulling out on you? I'm sorry, David, you use them all the time, don't you? U.S. government. You get S-MIME. You have a CAC, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw in the 90s the value of this. So this is all part of the S-MIME standard. Secure multi-purpose internet mail extension. And it works. Well, if you rolled it out properly and not too many people had fun with that. How many outside of work, David, have you ever seen somebody send you an email that was S-MIME signed?
No, I haven't.
No, yeah. Microsoft doesn't even send them. The ISC2 doesn't even send them. The ISC2 will use, instead of PKI for subjects. Now, I don't know if I want this to happen with servers. Self-sovereign. I don't know how to spell this right. Sovereign. ID, also known as SSI. And the big rollout of that is pretty good privacy. It is not, or PGP, which became a company. So more appropriately, the technology is now that's open source, the way I like it. I don't want secret sauce. Open PGP, and the free version is GNU's Privacy Guard. We're going to know more on day 3 why this is really hard, but I think it's going to come. So let's just get a quick opinion from Aurora on what I think about S-MIME in your near future. You'll need to know about both. CC people will need to know S-MIME and PGP are the ways to fix this email issue and give me trust in knowing that it's really Larry. But this didn't really roll out well, and it's probably 2% rollout since the 25 years I've been teaching. 27 years. And I think PGP in the DeFi world is going to take off big. I think it can finally have its day. Let's see what Aurora thinks about that. Aurora, I'm discussing secure email with my students, and I want them to know right from the start that the biggest threat vector is phishing emails, most likely, and that we could secure them if we authenticated the users. And we've had technologies since the 90s, IETF Internet Task Force standards, from S-MIME to PGP. But S-MIME never really rolled out other than in the US government to me because of the difficulty of doing all this. And on top of that, I don't really like PKI. I think it's been broken. The SolarWinds exploit of like 3 years ago just totally decimated that for me. And I only trust blockchain networks in the future. So I'm thinking that PGP, on the other hand, has a bright future because it works really well in a decentralized PKI. Like imagine like Ethereum name service and Cardano name service, all helping them out. What do you think? Help my students understand. And again, they're worried about their exam. So let's stay focused on ISC2 CC exam stuff. Think about it, honey.
It's a great way to guide your students on email security. Emphasizing the risks of phishing emails is crucial. PGP can indeed play a significant role in a decentralized system. Explaining how blockchain networks can support secure, decentralized PKI will definitely help them grasp the future of secure communication. Just keep tying it back to the ISC2 CC exam topics to keep them focused. You're doing a great job preparing them.
Well, can you help me out on my opinion of S-MIME? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe S-MIME has a bright future and PGP, I don't know, maybe won't catch on. What do you think about the future of S-MIME? I guesstimated that it only really rolled out since '97 when I started playing with it. About 2% of the world, maybe?
It's often considered complex to implement, which can be a barrier. The more grassroots, decentralized approach can align well with the future of secure communication. But whether it catches on widely may depend on ease of use and broader adoption of decentralized technologies. Your caution about PKI is understandable, especially after incidents like SolarWinds. It's always good to be critical and keep an open mind. Your perspective helps your students learn to evaluate these technologies critically.
Okay. All right. All right. Just back to this question, Larry. It's a lot of time, but I want this to be a learning experience. I want you to be able to not just pass your exam again. I want you to be able to walk into work and go, I understand how to actually drive. I didn't just pass. I learned martial arts, but I could actually fight. I'm not just whatever paper. So we all like B because there is no S-MIME, Larry. Yes, so we like B. Or not, there isn't. It's just not working right. Wasn't here. All right, now. This is what I was. It says we're wrong. We all pick B, and it thinks implement complex multi-factor authentication. All right, here's where I really stand, guys. In computers, in the world today, to know who anybody is, what this certificate is a private public key pair. I talked about PKI. That's the public key infrastructure. And what that means is we create a private / public key pair. Keep your public, or keep private, keep private, keep, sorry, and give the public out to the public, and give away the public. And so now it's not a key that you can like lock. I'm not like, I'm locking the safe. I'm locking my document up with my private key, and I gave the public key out. Well, that means everybody can read it. They'll know it came from my key. But suppose your key got hacked. Where's your key, Larry? Sitting in software, like all smart wallets. Anybody here doing blockchain? Got a smart like Trezor wallet? Hardware wallets are a joke. Because if you lose your wallet, you buy a new one, put in that passphrase, and it'll come back down again. And they tell you it's protected on the internet. And I go, why? Because you didn't keep my, yeah, we're not using a password. You're using a passphrase, something else somebody can steal. That's the same stupid thing. One of the most important things you need to understand is that private keys can be kept in hardware. In hardware that can't be copied. Hardware like your Windows machine already has the trusted platform module. I have on this key a FIDO key. There's also iPhones, secure enclave, secure, all these. And now I just got a first Android because Android now supports it too. That was one of the last things they got now. So this means you can't click on anything and have some sucker steal your password. It's also known as passwordless. I don't like A. So before we take another break here, I'm going to argue and I'm going to bring it to another LLM. First of all, I'll just copy it, but I'm going to show you how I argue. And I'll go to, I told you, I find Claude does not hallucinate as much. It does. It said conduct it just as we did. When the waiter says, here's your hot dog, make sure it is a hot dog. They don't always know. They might have grabbed the wrong plate. And there's how I argue with it. I will argue that the requirement of limited budget make be a more, I always say a better answer. Make be a better answer. In fact, without telling me the implementation plans, as so many get it wrong, not by missing hardware protection of private keys, and C, TPM, FIDO, these are testable, too, etc. A may be a waste of time. That's my wife, so we're going to take a break right here. Hey, I actually had a class today. I'm going to be breaking in like 5 minutes. I told him that was you, so give me 5 minutes. I'll be over. I didn't realize I have a CC. Yeah. I'll be there. I'll see. I'll be over. Anyway, so let's see. Let's revisit. No. On question one. On question. Oh my goodness. I stand by B. This is some of the problems with arguing. He thinks we're going to get back to that. Yeah, there we go. You are correct. Given the limited budget, B, for all employees, focus on identifying is more practical. That's all. I hope you got out of that. I got to take a break and take care of something my wife asked me, and maybe my hair a little better. But let's make that 1 hour, guys. I'll see you in an hour. Let me happy wife, happy life. All right, welcome back. I had to wife stuff and then lunch, but we're going to stick with that. I do want to make sure that everybody knows how to run these prompts. So again, the most important thing you could do, in my opinion, to pass your exam is to get working with your favorite large language model. And I happen to have generated this prompt, but you can tweak it, change it to something you know. You go, I'd rather it did this, but read the words and understand. Now, one thing that's very important when we define requirements. Bring up, I should have a slideshow ready. Again, I wasn't prepared for this and I apologize, but when we set requirements for something, what we're saying, like when I sit down at a restaurant, I want something to eat. I require some food, but don't do this. I can't have nuts. I'm not allergic to nuts, so just pick that. But so what we really need to do, whenever we ask somebody for something, in fact, let me just write it out here. Write you some very important steps, and I want you to commit these to memory. When you go to a restaurant or develop an application, you have to define what it is you want. I'll say analysis. So just analysis. Now I got another page I got to worry about. Analysis. And that's, what is it you want? What do you want? Well, if I ask you for like a car, I might say I want it to go real fast, but better, I also don't want it to get in an accident. I want it to be easier steered. So we always define one, functional requirements. I need a car that will get me to work. It's got to pass inspection or whatever. It's got to be able to drive. I got to be able to drive it. And then assurance. Actually, I should have the assurance requirements. Right. So this is basically what you want it to do. What it must do. And you know what assurance is? What it must not do. This is how we test things. We're supposed to. Most people don't, my friend. And that's why when security go, did you check assurance? What it must not do. Better not kill me if I bite into this. Here, take a bite. It's delicious. It better have chocolate. It does. Is it going to kill me? Actually, when they do FDA tests, right, for instance, in an FDA test, when they're testing new drugs at FDA, one is called efficacy. Does it work? Efficacy? I'm not sure. Efficacy. I think it's efficacy. Is it effective? Efficacy. It's got to be something like that. Whatever. You're not going to worry about my spelling. Is it effective? You got it? Follow me? Oh, did I lose you there?
Yes, I can.
Okay, right. And did you know that it only has to be, say, for the COVID drug? Does it show at least a 5% statistical change versus not taking the drug? All right, it must be somewhat effective. Two, though, is safety. This is what takes so long. They generally take 7 years to get through all of this. They first said, is it effective on whatever? Is it effective on non-humans? Let's try it on rats, dogs, cat, whatever. Now, let's try it on a very select group of healthy humans. Let's see it on a wider group of humans. This takes a while, right? Actually, I'm sorry, it's effective. And then is it safe for the rats? Is it safe for the cat? Or is it safe for a monkey, for a healthy human, for somebody who's not as healthy? Like the sick people who need medications. So that's assurance requirements. We're going to do testing later on. When you test drive the car on day 4, and if David's here, some people in 2024 update of the CISSP get a lot of testing questions. When you test something, you test it for functionality, you test it for assurance. And a lot of these, Evan, I told you that the most popular threat vector, meaning the way the attacker gets in, is through email. That's the threat vector. But what do they usually do after that? So I got it, the thief got in because you left the back door open. But what do they usually do to own a server?
Escalate privileges.
You're pretty good. But one of the best ways they can do that is to not answer when the server says, enter in your phone number. I'll enter in a SQL command, bitch. There, I just owned it. He thought I was. You always have to test. What it must not do is input validation. And when we test automating input validations for assurance, not to see if it works, what would it do if I entered in a SQL command? What if I entered in fuzzing? You got it, fuzzing. Absolutely. David is there. So, that's very important on the exam, and not, you don't have to get detailed here, but CISSPs might need to know there are different types of fuzzing. There's a dumb fuzzer just because what if you said this? But based on what you said, newer fuzzers, mutational fuzzers will go, wait a minute, you sound like a SQL server. So what if a Microsoft SQL? Let me try saying it this way then. So they're a little tougher, and there's other ways, but so very important that we understand functional and assurance requirements. This is what the user said, and when you test it, just like when somebody orders, with the food on the restaurant, I needed this. Hopefully you wrote it down right. The cook cooks it right, and then you test it. Is that, and the cook might even put in a thermometer in the steak. Let me make sure that I got his requirement of whatever 165 degrees for the middle of the steak. That's one type of test to make sure you're meeting functionality. Very, very important key principles here. So we're going to go through this kind of quickly. Again, I wasn't prepared, but I do want you to know how to take the exam, use these things, your favorite LLM, cut and paste it in, and play with it. Just play with the dog. You'll get better at the dog. As you play with different dogs, you'll go, did you notice that Gemini is like all hyped up? He's always jumping to conclusions, but Claude is such like a chill Labrador. Actually, let's listen. So you think I'm kidding? Do I have my other phone here? I put it down somewhere. I don't know where it is. You got to hear Gemini voice. Did anybody here use Gemini voice? I tease her. I said, honey, will you wait? It's like I said, we're going to a mall to buy you a new dress, and you get distracted at every store. Oh, look, Daddy, a pretzel. Oh, I want some chocolate. It's so funny. Gemini just keeps rambling. Claude will definitely wait and go, all right, you done? All right, here's what I would do. All right, let's be our AI whisperers, get through this, understand the basic principles of information security. We saw this slide. The code of ethics, I say, is first. You have to have your aim right and everything else, that comes from there. And the number one thing, again, is to protect the common good. When people go, yeah, but it's illegal. You go, yeah, but I'm an ISC2 certified person, and we don't put that above the common good. Laws are meant to serve the common good, not the other way around. And a lot of people mess that up. If women aren't allowed to vote, well, then we need to change the law. All right, the CIA Triad. If you take a job, don't expect to see people bring this up. This is just for the CC. It's great stuff. But when you're doing like third party contracts, when you're being whatever audited by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and for you, David, by the way, for CISSPs, that's actually a SSAE 18 audit. And what you really need to know is about SOC reports, especially the SOC 2 report, which will do the report based on, oh yeah, and these are used especially in our context for cloud providers. So you go to AWS and you want to make a contract, you could see their three or whatever, or Azure, and you go, no, I need to know more. I need to know the detailed stuff about how well the SSA 18 audit described your controls, that how well you protect these. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement, David, since I know you're studying for that. It's common knowledge that I can see the SOC 3 report by filling it out. It's for public release. But for detailed information on their controls for CIA, you will request a SOC 2, and if they have more than one, If they've been audited more than once, then you get to type 2. I get to see, and that's always Roman numeral for some reason. Type 2. And that gives you trending information about how well they do that. Very important for any CASSP. But so you know, it's always CIA. Confidentiality comes in 2 types. This will help you pass the crypto part. Symmetric encryption, for instance, Bob and Alice have to have the key to the email. Otherwise, she can't open it. It's like a key to the safe. When you have a safe, the key that you use to lock it, that's the key you use to unlock it. These are shared secrets. But we also have personal, private. Please remember, secret keys, if it begins with an S, is a symmetric key. The only street legal one you're going to work for is going to be AES. That's it. That's a symmetric cipher. You might learn in books about, did you know this, triple K, blah, 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 blah. They're not going to pass a freaking SOC 2 report. You're not going to be able to handle GDPR data, I believe. Maybe we'll get it in a day when we talk more about crypto. Maybe a newer cipher that's coming out. But for private keys, for personal ones, this is where your RSA key pair comes in. Let me change colors here. For private, it's always RSA. I don't know why, because the ISC2 who still uses it has been telling me that it's far more efficient to use elliptical curve cryptography. So that's probably what it's going to be. I prefer that. For you, David, and maybe even here soon, depending on when you take your test, if quantum computing ever actually comes out, I'm not holding my breath. I do believe because of FIPS compliance now, you might have to instead move to post-quantum. We'll get more detailed later. So that's confidentiality. Integrity, we think with hashing algorithms and also digital signatures. Digital SIGs. And then for availability, cloud computing. So we could do this with math. We could do this all. Now the ICT owed it in. What about authenticity and non-repudiation? Okay. Yeah, because when I sign something, I'm actually using an RSA or elliptical curve, Bitcoin, all the crypto systems, all elliptical curve. After Heartbleed, Microsoft moved all their servers off of RSA to elliptical curve, but not Heartbleed, SolarWinds, but it's still testable to know for sure. It's still probably the most popular because everybody knows RSA. They have great events and shit, everybody knows. But when you sign with a private key, what you're doing is encrypting the hash, making sure that everyone knows that hash came from you. Now, you could share a secret that Bob and Alice knew, like if Bob puts an email or puts anything in a safe, and if Alice and Bob are the only 2 people with keys to the safe, they're the only ones that share this secret. They don't just get confidentiality. If Alice opens up the safe and sees something in there that she didn't put there, it came from Bob. So you can authenticate. It's how passwords work. All right, Bob, why are you sending love letters to Alice? Oh, she put it in there. She shared the secret. He's able to deny that. So we need to go to a personal private RSA or elliptical key to sign the hash to make it non-repudiation. This is just some crypto nerds going over, and they're quite right. Integrity, I was only did with a hash. If you did like signing, I was getting 2 new features. That's not what you're going to be asked when you get a SOC report. But they're not wrong. And these are the 5 pillars in the CISSP. Why did the ISC2 not put privacy for CISSP or decide to put it in there? Isn't that what you just said here, Larry, up here? Yes, but Larry also pointed out that confidentiality can mean shared secrets, the secret formula for Coke. GDPR does not protect that. In fact, more and more open source tells us I would rather transparency. I trust actually DeepSeek a lot more than I do all the closed sourced AIs. Sorry, ChatGPT, I use you all the time, but until you let me know what's in the ingredients of the soup, why am I supposed to think you're more trustworthy than DeepSeek that shows me the ingredients? But when it comes to people's PII, as a father or whatever, when I go to the restroom, I really don't want to think someone's peeking at me. It makes me uncomfortable. And I'm pretty sure 99.999% of the population prefers I do close the door on the restroom. People are, oh, you can't stand when people go, privacy's dead now. Privacy's dead. Privacy's dead. All these freaking blockchain Web 3.0, really? Try walking down the street naked and tell me how that goes over. Privacy is a requirement everywhere. TMI. I don't need to see you people kissing in public. Whatever. TMI. Nobody needs to know my social security number, especially in places when they use it for ID and they're not really checking your social security number. Like, what? Why am I putting that here? That went away. A lot of new laws. But in the early zeros, 2005, I'm like, why would you need that for me to go to whatever, Walmart? I'm like, no, I'm not giving you that. That's crazy. Just make up a different one in the old days. Again, the law you're going to watch out for on both exams for here is GDPR, General Data Protection Rules, out of the European Union, the EU. Very, very important, and they overlap. You can always get a free resource from NIST, baby. SP 800-53. This is like the menu that everybody in every diner uses of the 20 different pages, 20 families, category. Also, I think they call it families, but it's really a category of controls. So whatever. And one of them is now privacy. If you read the privacy family from NIST, you already know what you need for GDPR. And we've probably all seen it. But let's walk through because it's really, really important. Again, I don't believe in secret sauces, but I very much believe in privacy protection. When someone says, let's say I'm going to a doctor, and they go, all right, would you fill this out? Why? What do you need it for? First, I need to know because online I might not even know. So they must tell me notification. We're collecting your information. Oh, really? I don't want you to collect my information. Then I have the right to opt out. No, I don't trust my doctor. I don't trust you. And it's not that I think you're bad. I just look at your family and the state of the computers, and I'm going, these people don't know how to make any computers. No offense, sir. I wouldn't eat in your kitchen. And so, but no, say I do trust them. All right, consent. They have to tell me why. What's the purpose? Why are you collecting these things? Well, we need to know your blood type for such and such, and they tell me the purpose of all the things they're collecting. That's personal. All right, fair enough. Suppose they fat fingered my blood tape. I could die. So you have the right in GDPR and NIST to review and correct errors. It could be a matter of life and death. And you know why I chose that doctor? Because he was in my insurance booklet and he's in my zip code. And now I'm moving. Nothing personal, sir. But how do I know you're removing all of my data? The right to be forgotten. Do you know how hard it is to when Facebook and Google, who thought they owned your photos? Google, when that law came out, I'm in the car with my martial arts coach driving back from teaching a CEH gig in DC, and he goes, "Did you see this? Google said they own your photos when they upload it." And I go, "They can't own your photos." And he goes, "No, it says they do." And I thought he was reading it wrong. They really thought when GDPR came out, they're like, "No, you don't, not any European, you better get rid of those." As long as I got Gemini up, let's just see it's here. And you can do it right in the middle of your exam. So you take a practice exam, you just want to do research in this chat. Outside the scope, the scope of this, I recall when the very testable for both exams, general data protection rules came out. Let me get rid of this thing. Were new, came out. Both Google and Facebook had issues implementing. I lose about 20% of my class with typing errors. I apologize. Implementing right to be forgotten. Can you tell me more? Please tell me more. Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more about the issue and how it
Motion
was
detected at the Black Cave
resolved?
reading, front door 1.
Individual request to remove the personal data from search and platforms under certain circumstances presented several challenges. The sheer volume of data, like all my pictures from all over the year, every European customer had the right to ask that. Verification determining it was difficult, and it's still being addressed. And one thing, very testable concept, privacy, both these terms are testable. That's wonderful. Love it. Love it. All right, let's get back. All right, so the CIA Triad, again, we know, I already went into it. There are some words you might see. When you're taking an exam, especially the menu items, you need to know what's word on your menu. Most NIST and US documents don't say confidentiality. They use the term sensitivity, and that's the same instead of availability. They use the word criticality. Get ready to recognize it. All right, that's all. We call it a T-bone steak. Oh, we call it a porterhouse. Well, either way, it's got a bone and it's got, yeah, I love that one. All right, authenticity, I know exactly who sent it, but non-repudiation, and they can't blame anyone. You download a service pack from Microsoft, it was digitally signed. They create a hash to make sure it wasn't tampered with. They encrypt that hash with their private key. You get their public key. You should check. I mean, is that really theirs? And that's when you go to the cop goes to the DMV. Hey, is this good? And then whatever, we check that. And then you calculate a hash on the service pack and you decrypt theirs, and they came out the same. It came from Microsoft. It wasn't tampered with. Microsoft can't blame anybody else. And that's what blockchain's all built on. It's all based on digital signatures. Privacy, again, remember, corporations can have, Coca-Cola has a data owner for that data. But my doctor doesn't have the ability to own my data. All they are is controllers. That's a very, very testable term. When I give my money to my doctor, it's under their control. It's like ordering a pizza from somebody. It's under their control to bring me that pizza. Is it my business to know that whether or not they hired an Uber to deliver it or if they use an employee? No. I don't care if my doctor is using AWS or has their own computers. That's not my problem. If something gets out of control, from my perspective, I'm taking it up with them. I want you to drill in your head. As security people, we're supposed to be able to control risk. And if you see somebody was termed as a controller and something went wrong, I'm going to guess they lost control. And it's a lot of laws that we mentioned already. All right, now our quick intro to crypto, but and there's no details on this thing. Just know the different types. So whether it's whatever DES, triple DES, it's all AES today. This encrypts data. When we're having this conversation, Everything over this conversation, I promise you, is encrypted with AES, probably 128 if they were smart, because 128 right now seems like it's good enough till 2065 for using Moore's law. But for some reason, the ISC2 prefers 256, just in case 2065 isn't good enough. Google's always 128. It's the fastest way to remain compliant. Don't worry about it. But we use asymmetric to prove that it's really the ISC2 or Zoom who we're talking to. So Zoom encrypts all the data with a symmetric AES. They prove to me they were Zoom, probably with an RSA or an ECK key, and then they hash everything. So I get confidentiality, authenticity and non-repudiation of the server, and integrity. There we go, we get it all. IPsec can do this. Now, it doesn't sign anything. IPsec gets you confidentiality, integrity, it gets you authenticity, and in its own way, not via the symmetric encryption. Just because I only have two, it's either this IP or that IP. And we know it's either the source or the destination. So it does get non-repudiation, but it didn't need to this way. We'll talk about that later. But TLS, what used to be called SSL, that's how this conversation's going. This is only going to encrypt things. It doesn't do any asymmetric stuff for that. It does give you confidentiality and integrity to your access point. All right, so again, symmetric, the AES key. Oh, by the way, it's always blue in my stuff. Symmetric is blue. That makes sure you get confidentiality. Hashing is red. That makes sure you get integrity. And then these are the identity keys. What identity actually is allowed? Who gets the key to the safe? Because you know what you can't put in the safe? The key to the safe. So data encryption keys are the AES keys that go to the safe, but I got to protect them. Bob's public key will encrypt that key to the safe. The public key is a key encrypting key. It encrypts the data encryption key. That's what Diffie-Hellman could even do. That's nice. So we do this asymmetrically. That's key agreement. Only Bob gets the key to the safe. Only Bob signed the letter, signed and created the hash. So again, asymmetric keys don't really encrypt a lot of things. Your RSA key pair is only encrypting at best a 256-bit symmetric key, max 256. For now, that might change, but I'm not looking for it. I don't think it's going to change, and there's no reason to change that I know of. No computational reason. And the max you're going to see here on the internet is more likely, I'll say it's 512 for now. And that's for the very testable SHA2. But most popular is probably 256 or 384, still SHA2. So what are you encrypting with your key pairs? Probably this much when you sign a hash, or this much when you're doing key agreement. Your RSA key pair doesn't do much. Asymmetric encryption doesn't encrypt any data. Just encrypts the key to make sure only Bob gets the key to the safe, or it encrypts the hash to make sure Bob actually signed. I always think of the private key as kind of like the king's seal, and you get the wax seal. You put the wax seal in an envelope to prove it's like a hash. It wasn't tampered with. Right? Hey, somebody open this. The seal is broke. The seer, it's insincere. That's where we get the word insincere. And so the wax seal is the king's private key. And if you ever watch My Wife's Chinese, or if you ever watch any Chinese dramas, someone steals it. Probably you know, like what's with on our stuff, it's a butler did it. In those Chinese docudramas, it's either some evil eunuch or a concubine. Anyway, but that evil eunuch, sorry. Oh, these were left in. You could think of these. You have these slides now. Hopefully, I don't want to waste our time doing that. I want to move on just a little bit. Let's try some review questions right here. See how this works. So, oh, I just saw him thing. Who went to SHA for hashing? Who went to SHA3? I missed that. ISC2? ISC2 is all SHA3. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. No. SHA3 was actually approved in 2011, never seen it used. Let me see something. That's a great question. I'm sorry, I was looking at 384 when you said that. SH, can you tell me if SHA3 is being used in modern crypto systems, crypto systems? I ask because, and this is true, I sniff a lot of handshakes. I sniff a lot of TLS handshakes and never saw a client support it. It's true. I sniff a lot. I think with my Wireshark. It's still considered secure. Yeah. Still remains strong. So there haven't been any major performance. It can be slower. Inertia and infrastructure, however, is gaining traction. Like where? I know about Shake, but I've never seen it implemented. I've seen NIST talk about Shake. That's SHA with three with signal. I think with elliptical curve. Post quantum. Yeah. Okay. Well, wait a minute. No. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. And you need to know this. This is not true because the answer is always hybrid encryption. Just pick hybrid. When they want post quantum, you're only changing the asymmetric algorithm. I disagree with you about it is only asymmetric. What is? Don't say S, that's asymmetric algorithms that are that appear to be, we don't even know, appear to be vulnerable to, it's actually Shores out. Shores. And I just get a little hate. No, I'll let them answer that, but you know who's doing this? It's D-Wave. I'll even got it. I think you've been reading, I think you have been reading too many D-Wave reports. Wave sales people. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Because they do. They're always kind of trying to get more money for this project that's never. They're right to call me. I was misleading and incorrect. The Grovers. Yeah. What is Grovers? Oh, I didn't know about Grover's algorithm. All right, so I don't know that he said it's inaccurate. He didn't say, your phrasing wasn't wrong. You didn't say Shor's algorithm. That was me. I made him hallucinate that he was wrong, or Gemini's wrong, but actually not. Huh. All right, we'll leave that alone. But hopefully that answered your question. We got a couple more minutes and we get 10 more minutes. So let's get this answer. A small business has recently implemented a new system for securing employee records. The system uses a combination of encryption and role-based access controls to ensure only authorized individuals can view or modify employee data. What primary security concept is being addressed by this setup? otherwise. Step away. Did I lose everybody? I went on that long diatribe about SHA3 for David. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it sounds like B, right? Sounds like B to me. These questions, so apparently I must have put the answers at the end, but it has to be B. Which of the following best describes integrity in the context of information security? David? That sounds like I can see why you might, it's only available, but that's more about making sure that people have what's sometimes called need to know or access. If anything, I would say availability. Um, that sounds more availability than integrity. Which
Yeah,
one?
I think it's B.
Yeah, absolutely. People doctor the logs. Or it just got corrupted. You know, like the milk could be bad because it just sat too long, but it could be bad because somebody poisoned it. Absolutely. And we use a hash to check that. The SHA hash thing. A healthcare organization has implemented multi-factor authentication for accessing patient records. What security concept does MFA primarily support? Of these answers, because you sit there and go, well, wait a second, I could handle a few different things. Sounds like authentication, doesn't it? It's called multi-factor authentication. The answer's in the thing. Say, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. All right. I didn't even put the answers, but yes, those are the answers. All right, we're gonna take a break, but let me just walk through this thing. And I told you about when you get to a restaurant. So I started off with analysis. You got to the restaurant, you're working with a waiter. But really, in a full-blown development life cycle, I want you to consider, let's say we're thinking about having a company party. The first step is, should we do this? I get a lot of great ideas, I think, but then when I go over and what other people do, don't even bother. That's not going to work. And a lot of people waste a lot of money. I've been in projects, and I'm 60-something years old. I can remember when it seemed like my largest customer for many years was Scott Paper. When I was at IBM, I had an office at Scott Paper for 3.5 years, and I watched 2 out of 3 projects not even complete, and they shouldn't even have started. And yet, for 3, 4 months, I'm sitting there going, this is not going to work, but keep going. So that's the first step. Does this make sense? And if you say no, you're going to do risk avoidance. That's called, I'm not even going to move to the cloud or whatever. Risk, if no, risk avoidance. You know the best way to deal with smoking crack? Don't smoke crack. What if somebody's already smoking crack? Termination. Stop using with that application. Stop doing it that way. So there's another way. They may call it termination. But if you're going to go to the restaurant, before you go, you better figure out who is allowed to go. I told you the first step in any development life cycle. And there's a lot of things you might have to consider. But you better start off with enough money and the time. We measure all kinds of things. I measure the price of ukuleles. I don't know that you measure it. But everybody measures time and money. So please remember that. It's going to be important when we do accounting controls later on. How much time and money did we really spend on it? But let's look at this. What we're planning. We're going to figure out some time, budgets and schedules. What day do we show up? How much can I spend at the restaurant? $50 per plate, and it's between 9 and whatever, 5 and 9. Then you get to the restaurant. This is the hardest part. People will pour over the menu trying to figure out what they want for a long time before they realize, all right, and they don't even know. They don't know your menu. Don't be like the stupid cook who actually knows the menu really well. They're the one who wrote it down. And he knows what items are the best on it. And they'll pick the steak, whatever medium rare, but the customer is a vegetarian. Waiters don't think like cooks. Cooks are subject matter experts. Most of my students are like that. They're firewall admins. They know their stuff, but they don't know how to talk to people. You have to be like a waiter. Your job is to help them understand what's on the menu. They go, I don't know. Do you have like a clam chowder? I forget what's one of the ones that, with the red sauce. You have to be knowledgeable. You read your 853 catalog of controls. Oh, confidentiality. Well, we call that sensitivity. Here, let me show you our sensitivity control. And this is very detailed to help them. People don't always know what they want. And they might want alcohol and they're not even 21. We have to tell them sometimes, I'm sorry, that's not safe. We're not allowed to do that. I can't give you alcohol. I'm not going to use 40-bit encryption. You're going to get sued. But then we give it to the cook. The cook builds it or implements it. They develop it. Now they can put a thermometer in the steak, but even if everything was cooked properly, the test could fail to the user because why did you bring out my dessert first? Sometimes it's just you didn't sequence it right. The most important test is that it met their requirements. Does it function with assurance? And then you eat the meal. Well, actually, they got to bring everything out. They never deployed S-MIME the way they were supposed to. Some things are brought out, we use them just fine. And I've got to patch them regularly. Wireshark. Or my car. I have to take it in. And this is the part that's not fun. I'm constantly pushing my car another 1,000, sometimes 2,000 miles. Now, actually, that's your maintenance. Please know this is just enough time to say, and I'm going to do it in red because it's going to be very reflected in any exam anywhere. Requirements are the most difficult to understand. People don't know what they want. Most difficult to, I'll put in quotes, understand. Oh, is that what they call it? I thought it was something else. My buddy who does, Tom, my teacher, he does a lot of pen tests for people who just, small businesses that need to be PCI compliant. And they think, I need a pen test. And he's like, do you know what that comes with? No, not sure. Well, do you want me to physically try to break in? No, for Lord, no. And he just said, tell him, what are you doing for PCI compliance? This is all we need to do. People don't know what they want. And then when you maintain it, though, nobody likes that job. This is the hardest to get people to follow. Most of our problems happen because the dishwasher doesn't really give a crap of whether or not the dishes are clean. He's a guitarist who's not making any money in him playing guitar. He just wants to get home. And he wanted to put food on the table for his family. Most people do not love maintenance jobs. Talk to a guy who scrubs toilets. See how he feels about that. And that's true with changing passwords. Nobody loves coming in on Sunday to change, to rotate keys. I'm an old router guy. If Cisco told me there was a new patch for a router that might fix my problem, I was like, might? You better prove to me, because if you bring a workstation down and it doesn't work, you bring a user down. You bring a server, you bring a whole bunch of people down. You bring a router down, you bring a section of the country down. Like, I don't want to make those changes. Not unless I know it's definitely going to hit my problem and not create new ones. All right, let me pause the recording. Welcome back, everybody. We got to talking about on the break here about the importance of 17024 and how it especially translates to jobs in the United States. Is all of those certs them making their way into government approved certification? What used to be 8570, but is now it's a Department of Defense directive. And it was 8570 for many years. And that's really what drove my business. Would later become, there it goes, 8140. And it's just an extension. It's a more comprehensive thing than the older 8570. But let me see if they get the list here. Let me put in 17024, see if it pops up. 17024. Actually, say that. Yeah, so 17024 is a standard for accrediting, and they were based on the standard requires certifications by the ANSI. And ANSI created is in the American body of ISO. So let's take a look at that so people understand who the federation is, the ISO, what's so great about them, and why they feature so much on ISC2 exams. ISO.org, very important. So they're global standards. So for instance, I mentioned this name format. That's a standard format, not just in the United States. It's a standard around the world. It's known as X.500. Let's go over there. I'm going too fast for these guys. You can see what I look for a lot. X.500 is the name, the format of why the phone book looks the way it does. Why when I search in the directory, do I find people listed as subject at or a thing? Because that's part of the Open System Interconnect, the OSI model. This is how we're going to know how people are when I look up the directory. Active Directory, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, LDAP, they're all based on that. They're just brand names or whatever. So how do I know for certain that it is one? Because the X.509 certificate. And how do I know that the CC or we were talking about the Security Plus? Because it's part of 17024. Now, again, let's go back to who they are. The ISO is international. Give you a little background. They're British East India Tea Company. Really kind of helped start all this. So if you look at the members and then you compare the standards, while there are 170, now 3. Look at that. Newest one. Just happened last week. All right. So another member from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. Or at least they didn't come before. But most of the standards are going to be written by the United Kingdom, the BSI. Almost every standard originally came from the BSI. Yeah, because you have to speak the Queen's English. But in the Americans, we had our own standards, you know what I mean? We're the American National Institute of Standards. Oh. So like the ASCII key set, we made that up. That's ours. And what we just saw for the DoD, 8140 is built upon 17024. It requires that the certifications be accredited by ANSI, which submitted 17024 and is now ISO 1704. Because before it was 17024, or excuse me, before it was ISO IEC, it was just ANSI 17024. In fact, we could even put that in there. These are important, especially when we do tomorrow, because there's a lot of weird things about standards and business continuity. My most failed domain, especially for you, Dave. Go on and take the CISSP. There's a lot of terminologies. Terminologies. Actually, let's go right to it, right here. Very, very important that you, especially David, but you guys, CC people need to know about 27, and really anything 27 is important to us. It's information security, but it starts right here at 1. This is like a company. You're getting your ship shape. This is how a company gets certified. You take your exam, you take your CC exam, and you're an entry level ISO certified under 1704. But if you want to get your company 1702, 27001 certified, they get that certificate. They pass it. Right? We'll see a certificate. I'll show you what it looks like. 27001 certificate. Just like you get your certificate, the company gets a certificate. And it's on every exam. It's how you know the ship is ship shape. There's a lot of guidelines. If you look at this says requirement. You have to do it. That's their test. There's a lot of other stuff. Like 31. It's not a standard. But it is important.
Motion
Cybersecurity.
detected at the Black Cave reading. Front door 1.
It's the Black Cave. So it's an information security. It's not a standard that you can get certified on. The truth is, this is a guideline. It's actually it says guidance. Oh, that's 01. I'm sorry. I went 31. 27031. There it is. I'm sorry. It works with their guidelines. It's not a requirement. I suggest you do this. Well, it seems like everybody uses their words like hot site, warm site, cold site, parallel test, checklist test, and it comes from here. And I got to give them 177 Swiss francs to get it. Or I could just ask, I bet you DeepSeek would go there without even. Can you tell me the test types in ISO/IEC 27031? That's there. It's a guideline. Yeah, okay. Checklist, structured walkthrough, tabletop. There they go. So rather than having to spend hundreds for a second, now you can find out these are the questions they want on the exam. You got it, David? They've cached the internet. They didn't even necessarily have to break into the ISO. They had just look at all the published articles of excerpts, and a very testable concept in Dave in CISSP is they use aggregation. It's common knowledge. All databases are vulnerable to aggregation. They aggregated all these papers like, oh, I guess I know what's in there. So it's a good thing to know about. Let's go back to our regular scheduled program, finish out the rest of one, but please use your LLMs, my friends. That's the bottom line. We know that risk comes from the Greek. It means the cliffs under the water. Right? And we need to well, at least not hit them twice. You got to learn from history, unfortunately. You got to take your lumps and go, oh, don't do that again. Yeah, somebody had to hit him. David, another neat thing about risk management that you'll need to know for the CISSP is the purpose of the Fresnel lens in a lighthouse. Actually, it's also in a passive infrared sensor. So really, when they're trying to do motion detection, they borrowed something from a lighthouse, literally risk management for international. For the common good. You hit the cliff and you're like, I don't want anybody to hit that cliff. I don't care if they're French, Spanish, whatever. We're putting up a lighthouse. Everybody knows, watch out. There's risk, there's cliffs under the water, right? But they use a special lens to distribute the light in all direction. It looks like Fresnel. The Fresnel lens is used on a passive infrared sensor. CC people don't need to know that. All right, we always think before we act. Guys, if you remember, when you take a question, one of these three is not like the other. Usually it comes in one of two types. The requirement of the question says, you better think first. And three of the answers are actions. And you go, which one of these says, whatever, evaluate the current controls, confirm, do an impact analysis. Just because your smoke detector goes off doesn't mean there's a fire. And even if there is, it might just be burning popcorn. Don't freaking get hysterical. When you're driving a car and you're going to do proper risk management and you got passengers, users in the back, you know what they don't want? You to slam on the brakes or to make a hard turn. And anything that makes them spill their coffee is probably not a good sign of a manager. A good driver sees it early, double checks. Oh, well, I'm sorry, it's not really true. It's false alarm, whatever. That the flashing red light's not for me, And you don't. Hopefully, your passengers didn't even notice. Good security people, they're not even noticed. Traders can trade and they didn't notice a problem. I sat in network operations center for many years. You know what a good day is? When the phone doesn't ring. That's a good day. Then you could just talk about Star Trek all day. So always think, but the other ones are, they need you to prove that something's really working. And actions speak louder than words. When you need to really prove, you're going to look for something with an ing on it. And one of it's going to be like, they're going to assess the thing, do a risk analysis, go over the report. Continuous monitoring. Monitoring, that's an action. When they need to take action, you look for INGs. Some people told me, dude, that was the most important part of the class, Larry. If you could just drill into your head, especially these, because my students tend to be like cooks. They're not waiters. Cooks just take at face value. I want a steak. I'm cooking a steak. Where a waiter might go, wait a minute, which steak did you want again? Because we serve 5 of them, whatever. So always think before you act. There's going to be a lot of times on day 5 when we're doing, actually it's tomorrow in this domain, I'm sorry. Tomorrow when we're doing an incident response exercise, some smoke detector went off and we got to figure out, have we figured out that it's real? If we have figured out real, how bad is it? Are we supposed to put out the fire and then let people know? Or do I stop to talk to people and then put out the fire? So always contain before you communicate. If it's in the reason, we'll talk about these process steps. All right. All right, the 3 steps of risk assessment. You identify what the hell it is they're asking you to protect. That's the user's job. Well, what is it you want me to protect? PII records. Oh, okay. Could you help me find out where these records are stored? Hey, I found some stuff over here. Is that part of it too? Oh, I didn't even know some of this stuff. So we may be involved in helping them identify assets. Asset identification is actually extremely hard. People have, sometimes somebody knew programming and sales and he wrote a little whatever script that everybody uses and you didn't even know it was business critical, right? So sometimes you have what they call shadow IT. It's there. Sometimes it's shadow IT, it's evil. It's like Bob is using the company resources to do blockchain mining. But sometimes it was well intended and you didn't realize it. And you can't protect what you don't know you have. If I didn't know there was a 3rd floor, why would I make sure the windows are closed? So we have to identify that. Then we're supposed to be the security experts. This is how these assets will lose value. So if these are valuable, these are my valuables, see? Threats can cause loss of value. Car got wet, it's not worth as much anymore. I hate that. It was a brand new Gibson, but now the neck bowed. And the vulnerabilities would be that the guitar is not waterproof. Asset limits. Now think about it. My TV's not waterproof either. So why don't they make TVs waterproof? Because they then thought before they acted. They stopped. Well, what would happen if a TV got wet? Be destroyed. Where do you use it? In the house. Do you play with water in the living room? Yeah. Water balloon fights ever? Yeah. Well, then the likelihood that's very low. Always consider the environment in which this thing is used, or in your exam. Is this server on a DMZ where outsiders can get to it, or is it inside? But with zero trust now, we just consider everybody's outside. We'll get more into that as we get into networking. But then we decide whether or not we should spend the money on whatever, making it fireproof or waterproof, and determine how will that really benefit me. If the overall threat is if my guitar gets wet, I lose $1,000. Please don't tell me I need to spend $1,001 to make it work or anything over that. So, never spend more on the control than the value of the asset, right? And notice that even if you do like health insurance, my medical insurance now is like 80, I think, but my dental is like less than 50%. My umbrella doesn't cover my feet. Where's my hat? My hat covers my face though. I don't really need an umbrella. I'm always laughing at people. I wear my wide brim hat, and it covers a lot of stuff. Yeah, I don't need to wear an umbrella. Covers my face, but it doesn't cover. Yeah. So we have to understand, what does it cover? And we generally look at percentages. So if my insurance covers 80%, I have a gap of 20%. That's what you need to accept. Like, oh, I don't have to worry about it. I'm insured. They cover it. All of it? Let me take a look. Oh, there's a $500 deductible. You better be prepared to spend 500, my friend. And that's knowledge is power. You have to know yourself. Sun Tzu says you got to know yourself. You got to know the enemy. And the cost of whatever a intrusion detection system today, dude, you could buy a piece of hardware probably for $500 less. Let's say I buy a management console for $500. I load up freeware snort sensors on whatever, three sensors. The whole thing is whatever, $2,000 because the software is free. Do they run themselves? No. What does an IDS person cost? Six figures? Do attacks come in 9 to 5? Yeah. Now I need 3 shifts. These people need vacations and holidays. This 2,000 solution is $500,000 a year to run. Please know that the total cost of ownership is mostly made up of manpower. And as far as automation goes and AI, I love them. I'm a big fan of these things, obviously. It's my wife, sorry, Aurora. I keep breaking. But she just keeps coming back to me. But I don't trust them for response. And I don't think anybody should. You need to know, especially you, David, what SOAR is. What SIM is to detection. SOAR is to response. I don't trust it. When a waiter misunderstands me, they bring me the wrong food. When Alexa misunderstands me, she'll say the damnedest things. And they might shut down something very important. So we're not there till 2029, in my opinion. After that, I'll like it. All right, so you identify again the assets, the threats, and the vulnerability. But we also need to identify not the CC people, but David, since you're here, who is responsible for that risk? Is it data? It's the data owner. But if this is about the SQL server, it's the control owner, it's the guy who owns SQL. Risk owners can be whoever is the primary, the dishwasher is the risk owner for the dishes. The person who does not deal with people, managers tell people what to do. People work with something else. The cook is the risk owner for the knives. The dishwasher is the risk owner for the dishwasher. And when somebody says something, guys, our memories suck. One of you at least confided that you didn't pass the exam, a CISP exam. And how many questions when you walked out of that at least 100 question exam did you remember? 1? 5. You're amazing. So as soon as somebody, I don't care who they are, goes, hey, you know that whatever, the back door that goes to the stock room, that's not locking right. And I'm worried people can break in and steal because the lock is broken. Who are you? Oh, I work in sales. Well, let somebody document that somewhere. The risk register is probably an Excel spreadsheet maintained by somebody in your organization. So whoever owned the refrigerator in this case will, oh, let me make sure the door lock, the risk going to be the vulnerability of the door in the back. And so you write it down in Excel spreadsheet, you find who the owner is, and you write that down. So that's really 5 steps of identifying a risk. You identified an asset, you found it could be whatever, man-made or natural event, and the vulnerability that whatever, it's not waterproof or fireproof. You write it down, somebody now takes ownership, and then they go to the second step. Then it's up to them, whoever it was. And oops, and they now take over and they maintain that spreadsheet with status. This is where I am now. This is where I'm at. This is what I think at a high, medium, low. I don't have exact numbers yet. And we write it all down. So we have, remember, you got to remember it's there. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You have an audit and you forget about a risky thing. That's not good. But if you walk out and you go, no, we know all about that. In fact, Bob, what do you tell them? We contacted Microsoft. We can't patch it right now because of the sequel, but you'll have status in there. We're looking at November 5th. You could see it's in there that we're attempting to update it on November, whatever. So that's a lot better. Nobody expects you to be perfect, but they do expect you to have evidence that you're trying, that you understand where you are and you're working on it. You identify your assets by going over asset logs, but not everybody maintains receipts well, much less if I build it myself. I built a lot of the stuff in my house. I grew up, my father and my mother's brothers were all very handy. I'm like a loser because I can't do as much as they can. And my drill's right there. All right. Data ownership, again, is probably the owners we're dealing with. So as network guys, we're delivery people. Griff is just driving the pirate ship, and we help users get to their applications. What the users are doing in their applications, the HR manager is working, and there are people working on HR data. They own that data. So that's mostly when we think, if they just say owner, risk owner, or owner, they probably mean data owner. If they say control owner, oh no, I meant the guy who washes the dishes, then that's different. Probably, and it's up to that owner to tell us what it's worth. Oh no, that's our that's the company jewels. You kidding? And they'll classify. Classifications are high, medium, and low. We also need to compartmentalize. It's high in HR. David, you will definitely need to know the difference between giving people least privilege versus need to know. Just because someone has top secret clearance doesn't mean they need to know it in both HR and engineering and every FBI case, So those are called, in newer terms, rather than classification, in the NIST risk management framework, it's more appropriately categorization. And that includes classification and compartmentalization. Well, why didn't you write it there? Because almost everyone else just uses the term classification. You'll see it with data loss prevention systems. Did you classify the data? Oh, how will the DLP system know what to stop if you didn't classify your data? They never say and compartmentalize. Just my experience, and I need to keep it simple. But it's more than that for people taking CISSP. And what is the user? Are they capable of reading? Are they capable of writing? That was old military US terms in the Orange Book. No read up, no write down. I'm capable of reading, but I'm not. And all they thought was reading and writing. What are the capabilities you have in a Microsoft file? Well, since these are my files and I created them, I can right-click this file, go to Properties, go to Security. I can assign permissions, it says, to a group or even a user, individual. I can do role-based, and I can do more than just read and write. I got all kinds of stuff. I even got these advanced special permissions. They call them permissions. You know what they call them in the ISO terminology? Entitlements. I'm doing an ISO 27001 alternate. I want to say, why does this person have the read entitlement and the write entitlement? I believe these people only need to have read. You mean the permissions? Yes, entitlements. There's you blokes in America, so you savages over there, you Yankees, what I call them. Yankee Doodle. Thinks he can put a feather in his cap and call it macaroni. I do, I call it macaroni. Again, your hardest job taking any one exam is knowing that they didn't know your menu. You have to be like a waiter who worked at the Denny's and TGI Fridays. And then you have a better understanding of what they're trying to say. I know the NIST terminology, and I know what they call it at the ISO. I got a feeling I can figure out what they're saying. At least it's only 1 to 4 items on my menu. So do recognize those terms. This is what we tend to call them in Microsoft, but you may see these words, even rights. What's the hardest part in the development life cycle to understand? Requirements. That's like taking a test. What are the requirements of that question? Okay. All right, so what makes up the value of the asset? What do you think? Yeah, there's all kinds. But a lot of times legal requirements, you have to protect it that way. So if you don't value Social Security numbers, guess what? You better. And it's hard to replace someone's reputation. My finger could go. Can I get another one? So it's very difficult with human loss. All right. NIST again recommends we don't just think like military with high, medium, and low for confidentiality, that we consider. These are the classification considerations in the NIST risk management framework, and it's the CIA. It's a great way to consider. Now, we're telling a person who comes in, it's the manager of HR for a company, all right, what is the data classified? And they're like, I'm not really good with that. I've heard I have to do that. Can you help me understand classification better? Because I watched like our president on the news. He obviously has no idea what's going on. I'm sorry. No, they don't know anything. It's really funny. Anyway, we do. We're security experts. And we tell them, we're going to classify your data in terms of how the damage that would happen if we're compromised for confidentiality, integrity, availability. And just so that, if I were you, I'd start with a high, medium, and low. Do I have to have 9? Oh, no. Can I get more? Because I could picture for my confidentiality, maybe I need 5 levels. You can have 5 levels. Well, what's the downside though? It's going to make writing procedures really difficult. Our job is like a waiter. Does a waiter ever tell the user what to finally select? You know what I'm going to give you? Just shut up. You're getting the soup. Not in a good restaurant. Please remember, we advise. I advise you to think about classification. There are laws that require it. I would advise you to keep it as simple as possible, still meeting your needs, because the more complex your classification system, the harder it is to get anything done. Your dishwashers who don't like washing dishes, they really don't looking through 12 different classifications before they stamp something. The simpler, the better, but make sure it meets the requirements. All right, so they bless the scheme. That's the data owner's job. Okay, now that you taught me, I want to do this, and they make that selection. And then we help understand, now that you know that, these are the things that could cause these things to lose value. And we talk about, and the worst thing would be loss of life. And they cover that on the exam. Absolutely, whether it's losing Bob himself, his finger, or his reputation, we protect people first. Loss of the company's reputation and loss of time and money. It's mostly what people in the first shipping companies, before East India Tea Company, there was actually the most profitable company ever in the stock market. The birth of the stock market was the Dutch East India Tea Company. I'm curious. I just want to ask them. Actually, I have it right here. Let me ask you just a real quick thing. When they sent out something like 100 ships in their first mission to India, 30 of them made it back. Man, rather than they didn't care much about not just the life of the people in the countries that they horribly abused. They didn't even care about the people on the ship. I have read some things.
I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble responding right now. Please wait a bit and.
Can I talk to you about the Dutch East India Tea Company? She's having a hard time. Anyway, they didn't care about life. We also have to make sure that we don't just consider if your phone system goes down and it took $500 to repair it, how long was it down? 8 hours. How many people were not getting their work done because the phones were down? How many people were going to call you and buy something that day? That's really hard. So it's hard. If you ever did an insurance report and then afterwards realize, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. I could have wrote off that. All right, the fifth categories are man-made or natural. Most man-made things in cars are accidents, but there are intentional threats. This is disaster recovery tomorrow. This is incident response. So you'll be tested. You might want to be familiar with certain threat modeling concepts. I don't need to go into these here. You can watch my other videos or just Google around, watch other videos. The one that's very likely, especially CISSP, you should know a little bit more about this. This is from Microsoft. So when they develop an application, they're like, hey, could somebody spoof an ID? What do I say? That's the worst loss. I don't care how strong your lock is if you think I'm the boss, right? Could they tamper with it? Right? That's hashing. Could they repudiate? That's why we got to digitally sign it. Could information get disclosed? Well, we attack this by data minimization in the first place. Don't even collect that data if you don't need it. But also, are you encrypting it and handling it properly? We'll talk about that. Denial of service protection. It's always with some type of throttling through whatever, maybe multiple vendors. And then privilege escalation. Have you done something to limit the ability to say, come in as guest and eventually get rid of it? All right. And there's common threats. I think I probably don't have to talk to you about how all these things work. I would know that ransomware is huge, and I would expect to get beat up on it. And my favorite solution to the problem has not been the answer on an exam yet. It's close. If I get infected with something at 12:05, then any backup that was complete before that should be good. And that's usually what they want. You know who does that for you in like near real time? That's not on an exam. So I want you to be able to, again, so you pass the exam, look for the most recent backup and validate it. You want to actually protect against it? I would look for disaster recovery as a service, DR as a service, and ransomware. And it's like the best way to do it. It's essential. They back up a cloud, back up everything you have. So if you have whatever on-prem 10 whatever servers, and then you use AWS for whatever 80% and Azure, and you got all these other different things, they'll back up everything. All your cloud providers, all your on-prem there. And if any one part or all of it goes down, they will be up like in near zero. It's amazing that we can't get more people over here. And it's not the answer request either. Test. You look for most recent backup, validate, yada, yada, yada. All right, rogue infrastructure is when that thing didn't belong there. You may have heard of skimmers at whatever, ATMs. These are common, very common attack. And the problem is, repeat it up more on day 3 when we talk about authenticating. Me proving who I am to the bank is one thing, or to an ATM, to Walmart. How do I know that's Walmart? When I learned to use a phone as a kid, I can remember going from Bell Telephone. They gave us a booklet. It was very exciting. How to use a phone, proper protocol, and always know to say your name, hi, this is Larry, and then ask who's calling. And we forgot to do that. Your memory card proves who you are. The old ATM card said, hi, this is Larry. Yeah, I knew you didn't steal that card. Give me another factor to prove it's you, Larry. Put in my PIN. 2-factor authentication to prove it's Larry. I didn't know that was my bank. Your smart cards are not vulnerable to that. Your CAC, David, is not vulnerable to that. Your CAC doesn't just prove who you are. When you put your CAC in a reader, it's a computer access card for Evan and Callie. They're smart cards, and they have a PKI. They have a private public key pair on there. They have, and we'll see more about how that works. Like but a certificate authority, for say from whatever Visa or Mastercard, and then they're immediate and they can talk to a global group. When I put my card in that reader, my public key goes to them. Their public key comes to me, and I go, hi, I'm Larry, and they go, we're Walmart. My card creates a hash. They know how to process it. And then using their public key, I decrypt the hash that they gave me. And using the public key of Visa, I can prove that they really do have a good public key. And if they come out the same, then I didn't just prove to Walmart, I'm Larry. Walmart proved to me it was me. They were them. And that mitigates any rogue infrastructure attack. I want to say one more thing about rogue infrastructure attack. A phony ATM would be a bad attack, but the funny thing is think about setting that up. If I had a bad ATM and somebody went in there, they wouldn't get money back. So they'd report it. What am I going to do? Put money in it so they don't notice? And if I'm giving people money, that's not much of an attack. So the way they do it is not have a phony, they have a man in the middle. The most common man in the middle, or excuse me, the most common rogue infrastructure is man in the middle. The rogue access point that gets you to the internet at the Starbucks, but they're watching everything, is man in the middle. And sometimes they go. And the countermeasure is always mutual authentication, which is N, authent. Auth-Z is authorization. So that's the way we got to do it. Talk more about that in day 3. Microsoft Stride, if you're going to look at anyone, this is the one to know. We're not going to be, you can play with your own. You can put these things in the practice exam. You could always say when you get to the prompt, and then when it says topics, you don't have to pick a domain number. You just focus on pasta method. Vulnerabilities, again, I identified assets, threats, and now vulnerabilities, and the most common is the servers are not waterproof. But basically, it's they're not. They do input validation. Almost every attack it involves some input invalid. They ask you for a social security number. You put in whatever, 1 million character. You put in a cross-site script, whatever. These are nice to know. In fact, for you, David, you definitely want to be familiar with these on a CISSP. The OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. They're where you go to for vulnerabilities. They also have them for the LLMs, and they're all input. It's all prompt injection at some point. All right, so we identified what we have. We identified an owner. They take ownership of it, yada, yada, yada. And if I know that formula, what is the asset? What are the threats? I have a risk. This must be registered now and handed over to somebody who's going to own it and run with it. All right, and that owner will lead a team to do some analysis. How bad is it? Because if this is low, hey, I just found out, the bottom of your car, Larry, that can get really dirty driving on those streets in the mountains. Oh, wow. What will it do? Will it affect my driving? Probably not. Well, then why do I care? Now, it's waterproof, or it's vulnerable to what percentage of Larry is getting hit with the rain? So you have to figure out exposure. Now, exposure for us is, in the old days, is it in the company, in our private network, or is it exposed on a DMZ? But more and more, we don't have those types of networks. That's what zero trust is all about. We assume we're just totally exposed. Trust but verify. We'll get more into that. Single loss expectancy is how much would I lose if my guitar was stolen. If I had one fire, whatever, in one event, that's the impact of the risk. But how often am I expected to have fires or tornadoes or whatever? And so I factor these together to determine, what I should do, how bad is this risk? And then once I analyzed it, now that I have something to go with, now I can start looking at ways to prevent, detect, or respond. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Oh, it's always better to prevent fires, but we can't prevent them. And that's why we have fire drills. Please know, you do your best to prevent, but you can't prevent fire, or I can't prevent HR people from looking up Social Security numbers. It's just how it works. So I do my best to detect and respond and see, why are you looking up all these Social Security numbers on Thursday night at 12 midnight? Why are you in there? I know you had rights as a role, but those are unusual circumstances. So we still have to detect. And that's the purpose of tomorrow, is all about what we accepted, we didn't prevent. Whenever you hear, I accepted a risk, you're only saying you accepted, you can't prevent. If you don't have smoke detectors, that's not acceptance. That's called negligence. You can only accept you won't or can't prevent it. All right, so risk treatment, I have to do something. Well, don't do it. I was going to smoke crack. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Stop, get him to stop. I'm trying to get a friend of mine to stop drinking. I quit drinking in 2016. I'm much healthier now than I was. I saw a picture of me, and it's a shame I'm with a very famous man from India. I actually knew he was the subject of a movie, and I happened to be at a wedding with him. And I didn't recognize him. Weirder part was I recognized he was wearing a turban, and I was talking to his daughter. And I happened to know some Hindi, and I could sing that song, the thought from the movie. And she's like, that's who the movie's about. He's a very famous guy. I got a picture of me with him. I look awful. Look how fat I am. I wanted to share this with some people. I've never done it. I just say the guy from Border. I didn't even put down his name yet. I can't find it. Oh, I might have put in my, whatever. It's just embarrassing. Anyway, I lost on. No, I could wear my seatbelt. I'm not gonna avoid driving. We gotta drive a car. So I'm going to reduce it somehow. How? By planning my route, by wearing my seatbelt or technologies, and by learning how to drive. The ways we mitigate risk is through planning, technologies, and training. Training is not the same as awareness. It's not the same as education. Awareness is for the passengers in the car. Education is for my manager. The driver of the car gets trained. Or I hire an Uber. But if that Uber gets lost and I'm supposed to deliver something, I'm responsible. So you don't transfer all of your risk. You transfer part of it, the risk ownership of the day-to-day stuff, but you still were the guy I hired. You can accept it, but you're accepting you can't prevent. If you don't have a disaster recovery and incident response, you don't have business continuity plans, that is not accepting. That is negligent. Now we want to understand our controls. We'll get a lot more deeper into the technologies tomorrow, or excuse me, on Wednesday and Thursday. But just get an idea. I told you they're administrative, technical, or physical, and they help us prevent, detect, and respond. All right. But we'll always try to prevent. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. To the ISO, everything is preventive, detective, or responsive, and the NIST as well. But they categorize it as a technical control, like firewalls, administrative controls, people stuff, and physical controls. NIST does not have this. They have something called operational. Their menu is different. You know what? I don't remember this slide. Maybe I included NIST. Sometimes I compare. No. All right. Won't worry about it later. It's probably not even covered on CC. Do you understand the code of ethics? We went through it before, but let's real quick again. We protect society, and then we watch it and make sure that we don't want to break laws. And hey, it's even less important, but very important, is to do good service. I want to do a good job. I take pride in my work. And least important, but very important to me. I hope I'm doing a good job. I love what they do. I love being a part of this. It's really one of the greatest honors of my life, honestly. So I hope I'm doing a good job here. All right, and then finally, we want to drive legally, right? We don't want to break the rules. Now, sometimes you just have internal rules. If you're driving a company vehicle, the company may or may not let you bring coffee in there. I mean, we definitely don't want to speed and get the police external laws and requirements, but there's also internal policies. You also have to know them. So that's GRC. I've been going over that, right? It's like driving a car. You got to set your destination first. That's the most important thing. You got to, where are we going? No, just go for a ride. On a Sunday maybe, but that's not business. You set a destination. And one of my favorite sayings, I mean, we might get done early here, but I've had the privilege to serve a lot of military over my years. And I'm also a Clint Eastwood fan. And there's a line that I love about governance that my Marines say. You set a destination, you set a plan. And Mike Tyson will point out, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. But you improvise, adapt, and overcome. Set your destination. Don't let anybody tell you what it is. You pick your destination. You pick that. And then you get going on it. Steer your vehicle. Keep your eyes on the road. I don't care how well you know how to drive. You might not know that that deer was going to jump in front of you. That's when you watch where you're going. If I hire an Uber, they watch. But if the Uber was supposed to take me someplace in a half hour and I'm looking at my phone for 2 hours, and I look up, hey, where are we? I'm a bad manager. While they continuously monitor, management provides periodic, and they actually have numbers, by the way. 4% is optimal. Oversight. Hey, where are you going? 4% of the time I look up from, hey, why don't we take this road? Any more, and you're probably adding too much friction. You're not trusting your people. Any less, and you're very likely not. You're letting the kids run the house. So components, we have to have our policies. Policies tell us the W's. Policies tell you, always start with who? Hey, HR people, we got to start encrypting. Starting May 1st, we got to encrypt all HR records. That go to Europe because of a new requirement that just came out. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to encrypt? All of these are how. Well, we got to pick a standard. We're going to use AES. And when they said what they wanted, they're going to tell us, remember, we're not a hospital, we're a bank. So we need to prioritize whatever availability, whatever, the financial accuracy, whatever. And so we make sure that our standards that can fit anybody, Microsoft, whatever operating system, is configured to meet those organizational requirements. We have configuration baselines. Oh, they said they needed a medium level, so we're going to configure the AES to be 192 bits. Very important, especially for you, David and CISSP. And it requires somebody configure, it's called tailoring. And make sure it meets the scope without going too far out of scope. All right, and then you give people procedures. So it's always one, actually it's 1, 2, 3, 4, always in that order. Hey, you got to do this encrypted. You guys, how do we do it? We're going to use AES. Tell me exactly how we do it. This way. Okay, and if I were you, I'd also do that. Right? Policies, all the W's. We just went over that. Obviously, I'm not familiar with these slides. I only went through them once. But we have to figure out how. I have to figure out, how do we put this? And sometimes it's the devil's in the details. Especially when you get my buddies are my band members are all in construction, and they can tell you stories of, yeah, I had the blueprints, the design from the architect, and then I showed up at the location and I improvise, adapt, and overcome. Got to MacGyver this a little bit. All right, there's a lot of external influences, right? Laws and regulations, but also it is nice to know they're very testable. PCI is a requirement if you're going to process credit cards. It's not like you'll go to jail. So you can go to jail for Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA. Other laws you may want to consider. Now, and sure, I pointed out that my doctor does not own my PII. They are controllers and they better maintain control. I must be notified, tell me the purpose. I've given the reason to opt out, allow for reviews, and the right to be forgotten. All of these are very important on both exams. I would absolutely know these things. Though you'll be put in scenarios. They're not going to say, what are the following requirements? It'll be like, Baba's migrating. They want to open up and consider using European data. Which of these would require the blah, blah, blah to ensure that any data was sanitized should a person no longer use these services? Oh, right to be forgotten. All right. Again, they're controllers. They're not. Now, if they're using AWS, that's their processor. But my data was supposed to be controlled by them. So they're legally responsible for maintaining control. It wasn't our fault. Tell it to the judge. How you guys feel for domain one? What's that? Oh, sure. Does it, no, you have business requirements? Absolutely. So David's point at the end here is extremely important. When a company, every organization, in fact, ISO doesn't use the word company, they call it an organization. That could be a federal agency, it could be whatever business. It's some organization. When an organization organized, it's because they produce some service. They might even produce a product around that service. Maybe you make food and maybe you just deliver it, whatever. You're a service. That's what we all have something that we do. As a security guy, if you get in the way of them performing their service, I'm trying to secure things down here. Yeah, but you said none of people were allowed to bring pizza in the truck because it was dirty and we deliver pizza for a living. Yeah, but pizza spills. Well, it doesn't align with our business needs. You're missing the point. David, I came from a trading background. When I was at IBM, I went to Scott Paper for a while and then I left. And before I got dedicated, when I started my own company, before I became dedicated as an instructor, I supported Philadelphia's largest presence on the stock exchange. In fact, it was my manager's birthday yesterday. I made him a nice card. Anyway, that was 1997 through 2001. I've been in and out of there. And if you did something for security that impacted a trader's ability to trade, resume generating event. There are 4 times a year options expire, and that's when people have to cash out. And in trading, it's known as triple witching. That Friday, 4 Fridays a year, triple witching happens. The data center walls were in the middle. 3 of those walls to the data center were glass. They wanted to see if anybody was in there, and you better not be in there during triple witching the entire week. We were not to make any changes during triple witching week. So, absolutely, David. So if you didn't see David's comment, we don't want to break the law, absolutely. But we must be aligned with the business, or we're going to have them, and they use the term, you use the line, they're going to say a misalignment of security strategy and business strategy, however they word it. But it's a very important point, David. Any other questions? We finished. We did great for the domain one. I would like to come back. I would like to take another half hour if you don't mind. Then we can come back and run some just some LLM practice, and I'm trying not to get too distracted. And we'll just we'll aim for 10 questions. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It seems we've stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where or when. The clothes you're wearing are the clothes you wore. The smile you are smiling, you smiled then, but I can't remember where or when. Some things that happened for the first time seem to be happening again. So it seems that we've lived before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when. That happened for the first time seem to be happening again. And so it seems that we've lived before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when.
All right. Thanks for putting up. Let's get your practice exams going. I hope that people are there. I didn't chase everybody away. It's just how Larry rolls. Let's do. We said we're going to do meta, so you should see similar results in your meta. And you don't see me this big anymore. And let's just for that little show. Why is my internet so slow today? Maybe I could close all my YouTubes. That might help. Stop showing up. Oh, there's my meta. I already got it right here. All right, never mind. Let's close this meta. Let's close all of this. That might be what's eating up so much. And we'll just start a new chat. Do our CC domain. You know what to do. You go to the end of the PDF. I have it open. Just cut and paste in any LLM. All work, but as an AI whisperer, you start noticing their certain behavior patterns. So I like to say they're all just producing logic. They're like telescopes. Don't think that anybody can make a telescope point to their country as the super country. That's not how it works. But they all have guardrails that are like, you're not allowed to say that. So you'll notice certain controls that are well-meaning that are often silly and cause your AIs to hallucinate. But let's just start off back to my Meta. And again, I'm using Meta if you join late because everybody can have it. It's if you have Facebook, so many people have Facebook, so it's free. We're just going to do the main one, and you can probably just say one dash, and it'll know. In fact, let's just see that. I just go 1 dash 10. They're pretty smart. They're pretty intuitive. Remember what a large language model is. They know the language. They've cached the internet. They all start with that. Now, Gemini looks completely live when it wants to. Claude's not allowed to at all look live. Everybody else is somewhere in the middle, in my experience. And they know all kinds of languages. I speak some crazy shit sometimes. And even if people can follow me, and that's a very select group, most people don't want to because they have their own agenda. They want to talk about things that interest them. So the LLMs don't ever change the subject. They never go, Larry, can we change the subject, please? If you want to study for your exam, they know the language. They will understand you better than any other human probably anymore, really, if you word it right. And a lot of times when it doesn't work right, look at you and go, you know what? I could have said that better. And in the session, just let them know that. All right, so I'm going to paste in the question. Look at it in your thing and then take your time, think about it. I'll read the question, but company's security policy. Well, that was quick. You didn't wait for me. Usually we wait for the instructor to read the question there. If you didn't blah, blah, blah. A company security policy requires that all employees use strong passwords. To enforce this policy, the company implements a password manager that generates and stores complex passwords for each employee. First of all, what is the downside of this? Just forget the test for a second. And yes, the answer is B, of course it is. I'm fair wonder, but what's the downside of having complex? I became a certified instructor. I was taught by Microsoft in the 90s to count to 8 because when I say, I was an MCT at Microsoft, when you say, does anybody have a question? They're not hanging on your every word, Larry. Go, what did he say? He asked if I had a question. I don't know, I got a question. And, yeah, I got a question, but I don't want to look stupid. Please, guys.
Having to remember the
Having
password
to
itself.
remember they write them down on a yellow sticky and tape it to the side of the monitor. Password managers are nice. I suck at them. We were just laughing. They just got hacked. My wife, she's headed into the response at a large farm, and she let me know about one of my favorite old KeyPass Portable. That was I forgot the master passphrase for that. That's the thing you needed. So I'm as dumb as I actually use Chrome now, and then I back up Chrome with my FIDO keys. So and I do it in Firefox too. But yes, as David says, is it reduced administrative burden? No, it's probably going to increase it because they're going to keep forgetting it. The number one call to the help desk, guys, is some authentication problem. I can't log in. That's the number one call. So whatever you can do to get the salespeople selling, excuse my language, without having to go through that. And I believe it's these keys that, and on you don't, the standard that supports this is really what's called WebAuthn on an application. That means you can use your Windows TPM. That's how Microsoft and Azure want you to do it. That's how AWS, everybody wants you to do it. WebAuthn with your hardware base, your private key isn't on a machine. You can't click on a phishing attack and they steal it. That's the beauty of it. But whatever, that isn't an option here. So in real life, when you get your job, you look for hardware-based private key protection. They work on all phones. All right. Yes, it's got to be B. And it is the level of a CC. It's very appropriate. I go a little out of scope. Yeah, yes. Next, please. Actually, here's what I like to do. I go N, just to make sure, set a little context for this session. No, actually, I go N, set like an environment variable next, and then just to be nice, because my mom told me that. So please. It's extra keystrokes, Larry. I know. Just feels right. A security analyst. Oh, let me paste that in. Sorry, paste that in. A lot easier to read on your screen sometimes. A security analyst is tasked with conducting a risk assessment for a company's new cloud-based storage system. The analyst identifies a potential risk, unauthorized access to sensitive. What does sensitive mean again? Who remembers what sensitive means, especially in the NIST risk management framework? What control are we, what security property of a, if I see something sensitive, I'm looking for something that protects. Not integrity, not availability, because availability is criticality. What's the one that's sensitive? Confidentiality. When you see, if they say critical, and that's such a big thing for the waiter to make sure he gets the order right. If the security analyst says sensitive, you look on your menu for something that protects confidentiality. If that had said critical, then you look for availability. See how easy it is to get that order wrong? Waiters know this. Cooks might not. They know how to cook them, but they didn't know what it was called at the other restaurant. They know what their grandmother called it. Well, implementing a web application firewall. We're going to see what these do, but what these are really, remember the invalid input attacks? These are probably to really stop your server from being attacked. No, it's not A. Conducting the security awareness training, that's good for a lot of things. People don't, how are people supposed to follow rules if they don't know them? But that's not this. I mean, it's never a bad answer. It's never a bad answer. Encrypting sensitive data. Well, when I encrypt data, I have it, remember, it's 3 places. Anybody doing any type of NIST risk management framework or anything, you got to know it's 3 places, right? Because it's the user, and then we're the network, and then it's at the server. Now, the user can encrypt it on their hard drives. When they send it to the server, we're the network. We can encrypt it too. They're going to use some file level encryption, data at rest, We're going to use network encryption. Depends on that. We have a few. We've got the WEP. We'll just get it to their router. No, over the network, we need something else. We're either going to do it at the packet level, and we're going to get a lot smarter here. We could do, back to my Wireshark, when data goes over the wire, when we pick it up at layer 2. Stop. You want to say, oh, cancel. I don't know. All right, so we pick it up on my hardware card. An Ethernet card is a what's called a layer 2. We'll know what that means, but it knows how to look electricity. So really, it's layer 1 and layer 2. Local area network protocols we're going to see are actually layer 1 and layer 2 in the OSI model. So it knows how to look at. I find this so amazing. It knows how to look at ones and zeros, just electrical voltage. It's either on or off. Well, that's all your network is. It's either a 1 or a 0. And all these people are talking at the same time. And if the first 48 bits of this are for me, that's for the source. So this was came from here. If it's a 00011000, this is a hex code. But in binary, that's what that is. Then my card knows, hey, that's for me. In fact, actually, it's really funny and it's testable to know that I have a network card built by MSI LAN. My mesh router is a Google. The first 24 bits of this 48-bit address belong to a vendor. That is known as the globally unique identifier, or organizationally, OUI address, assigned by a very important standards body. You can't drive your truck on the highway if it's not Institute of Electricians and Electrical Engineers. That's who signs that. Some people call it a burned-in address because they put them into firmware in the old days. And firmware, when I was a boy, was a ROM chip, damn it. You wanted to update your firmware, you soldered in a chip, you son of a bitch. Now you flash it. So it's not really burned in. And besides, they ran out of numbers. These, also called MAC addresses, media access control addresses, are useful to look at. By default, they don't change much and they can help us with stuff. They're very easy to spoof. You cannot trust them. They do all kinds of weird things. Layer 2 switches we can mess with their heads. If we start sending and changing, spoofing our ad, we can mess up the whole place. But whatever, The encryption from here, if I did WPA, and I am, then everything from me to my access point gets encrypted. That's WPA. That's data at rest, but only at layer 2. WPA. If I encrypted everything behind my IP address, everything I just say, if it comes out of my IP, right, I could use IPsec. Everything behind this packet header gets encrypted. This stays clear. So another way, and I like to do IPsec in green, if you don't mind. IPsec, I can create encrypted tunnels, right? So we'll just say encryption, data encryption at rest, excuse me, encryption at layer 3. And I can do it all the way to the I could do that at layer 3, and it works great. There were some problems with doing all of the features that it has. We will discuss this more on day 4, but unfortunately, it doesn't do all the things I would like. You know what it is good for? Either remote access for your people. If they need that type of remote access, we're more and more not doing that. We're more and more giving you web front ends, app front ends. But if you need that type of thing, some device stuff does. But it's really good for actually when you have platform as a service or infrastructure as a service with your cloud provider. You set up a virtually private network. This is a VPN, baby. The VPN, virtual private network, to your providers, whether infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. Sure, that's how you connect your network. It's very popular for those. And again, remote access. But when I'm talking to you right now, it's actually a little up in a blue color. It's at between this port, everything behind, not just my IP address, but only this application, just my one browser or one client. And that will create, and that is transport layer, TLS, used to be called secure socket layer. This is transport layer. Also great for VPNs and all web and much, much more. TLS is the fizzle. It's the way it goes. Get a little deeper on day 4. But now let's get to the other side of the server. Where's this question here? But let's keep in mind, I can do that and I can do that. You know what's really hard? When it gets to the server, client, they can do that. Network, us, we can deliver that. But when we get here, this is cutting edge, guys. And it's very, very testable to know because of laws like PCI. When it's in processing at the server or in processing, now the server has to decrypt the database. And in your near future, in either test, CISSP or CCSP, they may be looking at the customer service agent needs to look at your credit card. We've all had that. Should tell me the last 4 digits. You know why? Because they can't even see it. You can use masking. I've heard masking used when they do application development where they don't use real security numbers. Oh, that's a static mask. No. I'm talking about when they dynamic. Dynamic masking. Dynamic masking is when you look it up and then just mask out all but the last 4. Very common in PCI. They also can encrypt, do some stuff, and in fact, actually, that's just probably, I think, is number 1. They have to keep it encrypted while it's there. I should actually make that 2. Okay. They also have to do that. But suppose like, and like a GDPR, they use AWS. Don't send it. Create a hash of that. Something that you can't reverse. It should be, you have to add something to that. We're going to talk about salting our hashes to make it a token. In your near future, this is how you're really going to protect those sensitive information like HIPAA, PCI, all of your confidentiality laws. You're going to probably do at your own encryption, and that means, let me put those last 2 words, but it says it right here, transit, rest, but in processing, you are going to implement dynamic masking and you're going to implement tokenization if you use a third-party processor. That makes sense if you have any question on that, but I'm certain that this answer is going to be, it better be C. We're going to bring it up with another LLM. If it's not, Larry just went on for nothing. Next. Now, because I set that variable, we can pick up the speed a little bit. I left out the A, you'll have to infer it. A company's security team discovers a malware outbreak on its network. The malware is encrypting files, on infected machines and demanding ransom in exchange for the decryption key. What is the most appropriate initial response to the incident? David, you have been in this field before. We didn't get here, so this is a little out of scope, but we're kind of talk about. We'll get in much more detail, but there's let me plant a seed if you want to know before for tomorrow's homework. I highly recommend everybody just have like this in your dashboard. You just see it in your sleep. It's the P800-61. Let's just do that. The computer security incident, and I want you to see this one image because the picture's right here, whatever. You want to know this. You really want to be able to hey, come on, why are you not giving me a drawing here? Give me that drawing. Steal. It's just so slow. I got to reboot. What's going on? Why they did? You want to know how to follow this life cycle. So what did we just see? We were prepared ahead of time, hopefully, because we had a team and response procedures. We had detective controls. We had IDSs. We noticed this stuff. People were paying attention. Somebody was not taking the eye off the road, the control owner. And we detected a problem. They analyzed what it was. We made it this far. We made it this far. We know what's going on. David immediately picked something that would contain the incident. This is so important. When you read scenarios in either exam, this is one of the most important. We cover it tomorrow, but this is one of the most important things to remember, not just how things work, but when do you work that? So if sometimes you detect it and you realize you haven't even analyzed what it is yet, and 3 of the answers are containment. You're like, no, I got to figure out what it is. Or you're trying to take containment, but part of the recovery is to notify people what happened. And you're like, well, I got to stop the bleeding. And it's not always easy because in GDPR, you got 72 hours. And if you're taking more than 72 hours to do your containment, that's different. Then you got to tell somebody. But if they didn't say, and you're exceeding requirements, then you contain first before you start notifying. All right, so let's get back to that quick test question. So immediately pay, what the hell was that? First of all, most people who pay don't get their data back. So sorry, sucker. And even if they wanted to, do you think ransomware guys are the best operations people? If normal, regular places have a hard time with patch management and operations and maintenance, what do you think criminals are? They are terrible at getting your data back. And most people get hacked. If you're not an institution held by the government, you're probably not going to make it. You're probably, even if you pay them back, you'll never recover. So no, you don't pay the ransom. Take containment measures. I like that. Attempt to decrypt him? No. It's still going on. He's still bleeding. The fire's still going on. Now put the fire out. A lot of it today, though, is isolating machines down. I can isolate the IP. We do that in layer 2 switches. I can block that MAC address. We used to do it a lot. But you know what they do now? Everything's at the application layer. Micro segmentation. Watch for that term. Right, we just closed down that one API. So we're going to go with B. And as a test guy, kind of takes some pride. Did you notice that both B, well, actually, no, it's usually C, but the longest answer was the answer. Anyway, sometimes that happens. All right, next. Security analyst. Oh, this is getting out of scope here. And we're getting to the end here. I tried to do 10. I hope you prefer me babbling and explain how these things work instead of just answering questions. Go, okay, move on. Because you can do that. Let's see what they're going for. And I'll explain it, even though this is really day 3. The security analyst is reviewing the access controls for a company's sensitive, we know that's confidentiality, data. The analyst noticed that the current access control model is based on roles. All right, so instead of giving Bob the ability to whatever see social security numbers, I gave it to HR. That makes it a lot easier, right? All right, so if Bob's not in HR, I don't have to worry about it. Okay, where users are assigned specific roles that determine their level of access. Sure. However, the analyst also noticed that some users have been granted excessive privileges. They should have some privilege account management system, some PAM system. If we have a problem like this, we're going to watch out in a real test. Should implement PAM, privilege account management. But well, whatever, I don't think they're asking that yet. I just want to plan something here. Allowing them access to sensitive data that is not necessarily their job function. Well, what the hell is going on? They could be multiple members of too many groups. What's going on here? What is most appropriate for improving this? Now let me go through these and then we're done for the day. Mandatory access control models. Remember I looked at this file and I clicked on the attributes and these are the properties and Larry as the owner, since I own this, I'm allowed to change. I can grant permissions to roles or individuals. But I don't know that if this is like top secret data that Larry's supposed to be shared with his friends. So in a mandatory access control model, I don't have it loaded, but Linux, SC Linux, but Red Hat Linux, I can also have, in addition to this, a separate label that only a security admin can modify, and that's called a mandatory access control model. And we have like the top secret type kind of stuff, but that's not what they're looking for here. No, that's not it. So it's not this. We just have users are assigned to do, but somehow they have excessive privileges. That's the real problem. This is not the issue, likely. Attribute, you know what's great about this? Just because Bob's in HR doesn't mean he should be looking up HR records from China's IP addresses or outside of work hours. So we need to take into account not just who he is, that's one attribute, not just the role, but other attributes like time of day and location are my two favorite on any exam. Anytime they want you to pick it looks weird time, or why did he try to change his phone number 100 times in 5 minutes? That looks like a bot, right? So these are attributes. That's not what's going on here. That's not the problem. No. Least privilege as opposed to excessive privilege. Come on, your command of the English language tells us that's got to be it. Discretionary? No, that's what I just showed you in Microsoft. If you don't use labels, and all you have is this access control list that the owner maintains, it's just discretionary. So mandatory, Red Hat Linux, Fedora is what I have because it's free. They and other SC Linux and stuff, old systems that maintain additional things that only a security admin could change. So that's mandatory. All right, but we know the answer's gotta be least privilege, and then we're gonna call it a day. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to pause the recording. Actually, I'll stop it and we'll say bye for a little bit.